Storm Chaser Kentucky Kingdom is a Rocky Mountain construction I-box roller coaster, and many consider it to be among the most powerful of the RMCs. So in this video, I will review Storm Chaser and share how I think it stacks up to the rest of the company's offerings. Storm Chaser was a conversion of the former Twisted Twins roller coaster. Twisted Twins was a custom Coasters International dueling wooden roller coaster built in 1998 when Six Flags owned the park. The ride was originally named Twisted Sisters, but the Twisted Sister rock band threatened to sue Six Flags if they didn't change the name. Twisted Twins operated until the end of the 2007 season. That was the year that Kentucky Kingdom had the tragic accident on the Superman Tower of Power drop tower. The backlash from this incident, combined with the debt of the Six Flags chain, caused the park to close the entire northwest section of the park as a cost-cutting measure, and this included the Twisted Twins ride. Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom closed after the 2009 season and sat idle for 5 years until Ed Hart saved the park and reopened it as just Kentucky Kingdom in 2014. The reopening was highlighted by an all-new Chance Morgan Hyper GTX roller coaster called Lightning Run, but the entire back section of the park remained closed. In 2015, Kentucky Kingdom announced that they would convert Twisted Twins into an RMC steel coaster called Storm Chaser. This was a bold move for the Louisville park, but Ed Hart stated that coasters were the key to driving attendance. And the conversion of Twisted Twins was an interesting one for several reasons. One, it's the smallest RMC coaster that they have converted to date. Twisted Twins was just 80 feet or 24 meters tall and 3,000 feet or 914 meters in length. 2. Twisted Twins was already a hybrid coaster. This was built during the time period when a majority of CCI's roller coasters had steel supports. So Storm Chaser is just barely a hybrid coaster. Most of the ride follows the Lola side of Twisted Twins, so a majority of the steel support structure was reused. But some wood was added to increase the ride's height and adjust the profiling though, so it technically is a hybrid coaster. When Storm Chaser was announced, I remember many enthusiasts saying that RMC was mailing it in with this ride. But this ride quickly silenced its critics once it opened in 2016. I've ridden Storm Chaser several times in its opening year, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Many people rode it in 2020 for the Keys to the Kingdom event, and unfortunately it was running slower than it has for me in the past during that event. And I don't think the half-loaded trains were the issue. This is how I usually ride Storm Chaser. Because the coaster is located in the very back of the park, with very few rides around it, you can often marathon it for the first 1 or 2 hours of the day if you head back there first. And it's usually no more than a 1 or 2 train wait anyway, even in the afternoon. It's a treat for a coaster enthusiast when the signature attraction at the park is a walk-on. Storm Chaser runs the first generation RMC trains. The restraints and shin guards really do box you in, but I have no issues from a comfort standpoint. And I find the crew operating this ride don't tend to push down the restraints that hard, so you often have more room than the other RMCs to experience this ride's airtime. In terms of the best seat, I prefer the back by a slim margin. I think the airtime is a little more abrupt back there, but every row gives incredible airtime. Storm Chaser begins with a 100-foot or 30.5 meter tall lift. At the top, you perform a U-turn and then head down America's first barrel roll drop. This inversion has some incredible hang time, and it's interesting to see how the profiling was adjusted on Twisted Timbers, which came afterwards. The barrel roll drop on Twisted Timbers is steeper, so it's more whippy. The one on Storm Chaser is more drawn out, and it sustains the hang time for longer. That's followed by my favorite part of the ride, the second hill. This giant camelback has some powerful and sustained ejector airtime. It's more reminiscent of an Intamin than an RMC, as the latter usually focuses on quicker and more abrupt pops of airtime, while Intamin usually has the sustained ejector that I love. Then comes a 135-degree overbank, which technically counts as the ride's second inversion. It really doesn't feel like an inversion to me, but it's a decent element nonetheless. It has a little bit of float to it, but more importantly, some wicked head choppers with the supports. And on that note, I need to talk about one of the most frightening head choppers in the world you can experience in Storm Chaser if you're lucky. This park is located in downtown Louisville, less than 2 miles from the airport. so if you time it right, a plane may fly overhead, which is one of the most jarring sights you can experience on a roller coaster. But back to Storm Chaser. After that pseudo inversion, you traverse the far turnaround. The entrance and exit to this element give strong pops of ejector airtime in the back. Usually the front does the same, but in 2020, only the entrance gave a strong ejector pop. The exit of this element was just giving a weak pop of air in 2020. That's followed by a forgettable overbank. It doesn't really add anything to the ride, it just changes your direction. But it leads into a picturesque bunny hill with some glorious sustained airtime. Usually this is strong ejector, but in 2020, it was more of the flagector variety. However, I didn't mind too much since it was just as sustained as ever. You then whip through a zero-G roll. I always forget how snappy this inversion is on Storm Chaser. You seem to take with more speed than the zero-G rolls on the other mid-sized RMCs. And then this leads into the famous Trick Track Double Up. For many, this is their favorite part of Storm Chaser, but I honestly prefer the more sustained airtime hills earlier in the ride. That being said, this element has some strong airtime pops, particularly if the ride is running fast. That's followed by a double down. This is another element that's stronger in the back, as the airtime pops are considerably more violent, but you still get 2 pops of airtime up front that are pretty good. Then comes a rather dull and slow helix. By this point, Storm Chaser has run out of gas and it's just limping back to the brake run. The pop into the brake run is really sharp though, so it gives a weak pop of airtime in laterals if you're riding up front. If the ride is running faster, these forces become more pronounced, but they still pale in comparison to the airtime hills earlier in the ride. Like all the RMC hybrids, Storm Chaser is immaculately smooth. Storm Chaser also has several great airtime hills. Where the ride does suffer a bit is in the pacing department. The ride has good pacing overall, but there are some filler elements. The overbanks are just okay, and the final helix is pretty poor, so you don't quite finish with a bang. But again, I'm comparing this ride to the RMCs, which all have really good pacing, so it's those little things that separate Storm Chaser. So what do I rank Storm Chaser? I would give this RMC creation a 9 out of 10. This ride has a nice mix of sustained airtime hills, abrupt ejector pops, and thrilling inversions. It showcases everything that RMC does best, even if this ride is on a smaller scale than many of their other rides. I think Storm Chaser is in the middle of the pack for the RMCs, around rides like Twisted Timbers, Twisted Cyclone, Wicked Cyclone, and Joker. How fast Storm Chaser is running depends if it's in the upper or lower half of that grouping. The most interesting debate for me is whether this is the best ride at Kentucky Kingdom. Right now, I think I prefer Lightning Run, but it's splitting hairs. I like the sequencing of elements on Lightning Run better. I like how Lightning Run has great airtime throughout and finishes with a bang with 4 of the most powerful airtime hills out there. Storm Chaser meanwhile has its better elements earlier in the ride. So those are my thoughts on Storm Chaser, the RMC hybrid coaster at Kentucky Kingdom. Have you ridden this coaster? How do you think it compares to Lightning Run and the other RMCs? I would love to hear what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if you gave this video a like, and you consider subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.